Dave, we are here at the Academy Sports and Outdoors Rigs and Techniques at the CCA workbench.
Yeah,
Dude,
I got a lot of crap
looks like
right here
you
today.
have been shopping there.
Well, it's years of accumulation actually.
Okay, so what are we talking about
Well,
tonight?
we're talking about trout, and he's a great fish here in Florida. He's kind of like our bass. Everybody can get to the trout. You can catch them from the shore. You can go wading after them. You don't have to have a boat. You don't have to have great big gear. You can go into any little store and buy you a $10 combo and probably go catch you a trout. And well, I know they don't want to.
I'm questioning you and your $10 combo. I'm calling you out on that.
Well, because I know
now,
those
maybe
Ricky rods cost more than $10.
Maybe when you started fishing, you could buy a rod for $10. They have Mickey's ears on it and stuff, but it's okay.
Well, like I'm saying, even a little tiny piece of crap rod and reel, you can sometimes catch a trout on because they're very, they like to eat, and they like to eat artificials. They like to eat baits, and when I'm starting out, I like to use artificial lures myself. But if you're just starting out to fishing and really want to catch them, you can't really beat bait for them, and especially a shrimp. Like, if you get a live shrimp and put it on a fish finder rig. I got 2 hooks in this one to show 2 different ways to hook them. But when I'm using a fish finder rig, which is nothing but a jig head and a live shrimp, which works really great this time of year. Actually, you can catch some really big trout on that with big shrimp, and I just hook them right through the tail so that the shrimp hangs back behind the jig head. Now, when I'm just using them on like say free lining them or put them on sometimes on a popping cork, I'll put them through underneath the horn on his head right through with a not even with a J hook instead of a circle hook. Now, trouts they're known as the weak fish, and because of their mouth, they have paper thin mouths. So we really want to try to take care of them. If you're fishing in an area where you're catching a lot of little ones, go ahead and pinch your barbs down on your stuff, because especially in the summertime, because you're going to hurt quite a bit of them. They're like a ladyfish sometimes. They swallow things down really good, and they will get hurt, and we don't want to hurt if we can help it. So pinch your barbs down if you're going to be fishing for them like that. Now, the little trout, if you're catching a bunch of little trout in an area, you're probably not going to catch big trout there. Big trout and little trout are different animals. And the little trout, like I said, you could sit there with
school fish.
Yeah, the little ones schooled up, and the bigger ones are usually solitary or in 2s and maybe 3s. If you see 3 of them, big ones together, you're in a good spot.
Right.
And what we'll do is early in the morning is when you want to go after those big trout. And like I said at the little break, big trout like big baits. And
so what are you going to use?
I like to use big spooks type baits, or the Skidder V, something that's pretty good size and makes a lot of commotion, because that's where I'll usually catch my biggest trout. And I want something that'll make a long cast, because there's nothing out there, I think, that's much spookier than a big trout in really shallow water when he's eating. They're very, very skittish. Soft baits, a lot of guys use soft baits for just about everything. They got the paddle tail kinds that imitate the bait fish, like little mullets and stuff that all trout feed on. Trout primarily feed on shrimp and small bait fish, crabs sometimes, but mostly times they're eating shrimp and small bait fish. That's probably my favorite lure. I've said it 1,000 times. That one doesn't even have a hook on the front. That's my chug bug, and I still catch fish on that bait even without the front hook. I still catch a lot of them on just the plain black hook. The Mirrodine from Mirrolure is one of my favorite trout baits. It's one of my favorite baits for anything, really. It imitates a small mullet or a little pilchard or whatever, and it's a tiny small fish, and it doesn't really have a whole lot of action to it. You put all the action on that bait. You can just wind it straight to you, or give it a little jerk as you're coming along.
What about corks, bub?
Well, the popping cork is one of the easiest ways to catch the trout. You can either put a live shrimp on it, or a jig head with a plastic bait, and you throw that thing out there where you think the trout are, like over some potholes and some grass flats, and you pop that thing, and that popping sound brings the trout to the bait and or the jig that you have. And if you keep that jig head within 2 feet of your popper, he's going to see that jig and come and eat it.
I think that our producer is cutting our time down. It just seems like it goes so fast. Don't you agree, Brie?
I just talk a lot.
I totally agree. It's just because I have all these cute youngsters on the boat with me over
look
here.
at you.
Look at me. Look at me.
Look
yes,
at
you
you.
included that.